All right, welcome to the Crypto Crush Show, everyone, where we interview key opinion leaders, founders, builders, and VCs in the space to gain all of the alpha that you need to succeed in these markets. Before we jump in, I do want to preface that anything said in this podcast is not financial advice, nor either of us are financial advisors. This video is for educational purposes only, and this video is not intended for those in the United Kingdom. Joining us today is a very exciting guest. Many of you will know her as Lady of Crypto. She is one of the top, if not the number one female key opinion leader in the space, amassing a huge following of over 700,000 followers across her channels, reaching millions of people, and her focus is on educating those in Web3 and cryptocurrency. Lady of Crypto, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Very nice introduction as well. Very nice to hear all of that together. It makes me sound very good.
Hey, gotta hype it up. There's not many females in the space, so we gotta stick together. But yeah, awesome. Well, obviously, like I said, you've amassed a huge following in the space. You've been in the space for quite a long period of time. But for those that don't know your backstory, and I know that you've told me in person, I thought it was fascinating. Tell us the story on how you got into crypto, because that one moment in time completely changed the trajectory of your life. So yeah, please tell us how you got into it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, funnily enough, coming from the UK myself, it kind of started how most good things in the UK start, really. And that was in a pub, believe it or not. So I just recently moved to the area, and I'd made a couple of friends. They invited me to the pub one evening and introduced me to some of their friends that were also in the pub. And a couple of them were talking about crypto. And I was like, what is this? I want to know more. And they were talking about the crazy returns that they were getting. And I was just thinking like what's going on? This is surely not like a real thing. Like they're just kind of blowing smoke. Because at the time I was kind of dabbling in stocks, nothing serious at all, mostly just tech stocks like Amazon and Tesla. It wasn't a full-time thing or anything. It was just kind of playing about. And when you think about the returns for stocks, something like 6-7% is a great return annually on a stock. And these guys were talking about like, I don't know, anything like 50x, 20x, all this kind of stuff. And I was just there thinking like, I'm doing something wrong. Like, what's going on? And I got chatting to one of them. And at the time, I was heavily involved in the kind of sport and exercise nutrition sector. So I was a qualified dietitian, strength and conditioning coach, all this kind of stuff. And I basically said to him, look, I want to learn everything that I possibly can about crypto. And he was like, right, okay, then, well, you give me a nutrition plan and get me fit in the gym. So we almost like swapped expertise kind of thing. And that's basically how everything started for me. So yeah, it's weird how literally having a pint in the pub with some new friends can kind of progress how it has to have just turned into this fantastic career for me. And yeah, it's amazing.
I love that. I've got a similar story. Mine was one of my friends who's now one of my closest buddies. We were working at an ice cream farm together. And I'm like, I know, so random. I'm like 17 at this point, 16, 17. And he's like, oh yeah, I've got like 5 or 6 Bitcoin. And I was like, what? Like, how much is a Bitcoin? And he was like, oh, at the time it was like 17,000 because it's like peak 2018 bull market. And I was like, first of all, why are you working in an ice cream farm if you got that much money? And second of all, what even is this thing? So yeah, and that's kind of how that started my journey. So it's funny how everyone has their own different perspective on how they get into it. But yeah, mine was an ice cream farm and yours was a pub. There we go. Fun time.
It makes for a couple of good stories, doesn't it? But it's interesting how things play out. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. So that day was just, yeah, it was meant to happen, and it's giving me all these amazing opportunities. And you'll know yourself, crypto is an amazing space to be in. There's so many opportunities and amazing people. So yeah, I'm really glad that I decided to go to the pub to this day. And well, said every British person ever. I don't think anybody's ever been disappointed with going to the pub. But same for you. It's, you know, if you hadn't have gone and done that day, you know, where would you have been now? So it's pretty cool to think about, really.
Absolutely. And I guess as well, like, because you know you've been in the space for such a long time and you've gone through that journey of understanding the space to a deep level, when was your kind of light bulb moment or your perspective change on when you thought, actually, this is a long-term thing? A lot of people dip in and out of crypto. Maybe they're not too serious about it. Maybe they've made a couple £100 and then called it a day. But for us two who now believe in it long term, I'd love to get your perspective on when you thought, oh my God, this is actually kind of revolutionary and I want to be in this full time.
I think it's maybe a little bit of a weird answer. But I think there was basically a time in my life for me where I had to make a decision. It was a bit of a fork in the road. And I was faced with basically choosing to go into crypto full time or taking what I thought at the time was my dream job. So I'd studied for years, I'd done my master's, and I was offered, as I say, you know, this job that I'd been working towards for years. It was a specialist role. It was potentially above the pay grade where it should have been, all this fantastic stuff, a bit of a kind of too good to be true best scenario that could have happened to me. And then it was kind of like, right, okay, you either do that or now is the time to go 2 feet first, everything into crypto. And I had to make that decision. And I spoke to friends and family, and I'd probably say something like 98% of people were like, go with the safe option, choose the job with the NHS that's got the regular pay, you've got opportunities for progression, both financially and skill wise. You know, you've been working so long for this. And I was like, I mean, you're not wrong. All of those things make complete sense what you're saying. But I don't know if it's a little bit of a kind of personality trait for me, but I am a bit of a risk taker. Like, you know, I've done skydives and things and climbing and all, basically stuff that, you know, your mum would probably look at you and be like, please don't do that. It's terrifying. I like to do shit like that. But, you know, there was just something in me that was like, do you know what? I don't want to get to 40 and think, do you know what if I'd have just taken that jump and took that risk? Where would I have been now? Because basically I would have been stuck in the 9-to-5 job, which a lot of people are doing their absolute best to get out. Yeah. So I made that decision. I jumped into crypto. I was like, right, I'm doing it. But the key thing here for me is when I knew it was long term was when I made that decision, because I knew that if I was going to take this risk, it was going to be a long-term play for me. There was no doing things by half. It was, you're going to do this, you're going to put absolutely everything into it, and you're going to make it successful. And I think that there's a lot of power in having that kind of mindset. And that's exactly what it was for me.
Yeah, all or nothing, definitely. And that's amazing that you did that. And I think a lot of people can take a lot away from that, because even I've been in that situation where it's like, do I stick with my corporate 9-to-5 that is making me sad, or do I do the scary thing and just go off on my own, not knowing whether it's going to be successful or not? And it was the best decision I've ever made, and I can't believe that I didn't do it sooner. To be honest.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's how things can kind of pan out. But I don't want to almost kind of encourage people in a way where if your circumstance isn't right, don't kind of, do you know what, sod it, I'm going to risk it all. Like, I had to kind of plan out circumstances. You have to think about, right, okay, if this doesn't go to plan, then what's your backup? I don't want to just encourage people listening to this to just, you know what, I'm quitting my job, I'm packing it in. You have to think about these things. You have to think about the consequences, and you have to kind of set things up as a little bit of backup. But as you say, sometimes taking that risk is totally worth it. And for me in this instance, it so was, because I love my job and I've got such a fantastic community of people around me as well. And there's just so much you can learn in this space, so many amazing people that you can meet. And it's just every single day is an experience. You never know what's going to happen. And that was a bit of a key thing for a career for me. I didn't want every day to be the same. So the volatility in crypto is just, yeah, it's perfect for me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's lots of ups and downs for sure. Every day is different, like you say. Yeah. So speaking of the markets, would love to get your perspective on um, what markets are doing at the moment. Obviously, halving's coming up. We've had a slight little pullback. So, where do you think the markets are going to go post halving?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing in the markets at the moment is completely normal. When we look back at what Bitcoin has done historically, we do see dips before or after the halving. But I think the thing is, for me, I think a lot of people will be disappointed with what comes next. And, a lot of people are excited about the halving. They're like, oh, I think it's just less than 2 weeks away. And everybody's getting really G'd up and excited, when the fact is that after the halving, we generally see Bitcoin either have the little dip or crab and kind of move sideways. The exciting bit is what happens after that period, when the basically the alts start to wake up, which is the bit I'm looking forward to. So in terms of Bitcoin, might be a little bit boring for a while, who knows? But in terms of when the alts start waking up, that's the bit that I'm really looking forward to. But right now, I'm pretty chill and just letting things happen and seeing where they go.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same perspective. We had that pre-halving dip where Bitcoin went down about 17%. I think that's the pre-halving dip that we were all looking for. And yeah, usually Bitcoin doesn't really do much after the halving, kind of goes sideways, like you said. So I'm hoping to see a little like DeFi summer again, which would be quite nice when the alts start, rising, because people get, especially the retail, get bored of Bitcoin and they start redistributing liquidity back into the to the altcoins. So is that something that you see happening in terms of Bitcoin kind of goes sideways, liquidity starts moving into the alts, and we see that altcoin season start?
Yeah, I mean, if we look back, that is what tends to happen. I think if I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were kind of saying, oh, do you think retail's back? And I think they're trickling in, but I don't think we're there yet. And a lot of people are, kind of buzzing in with the fact that, Bitcoin has had such a rally. It's broken the all-time high before, personally, I would have expected it to. But if we think about the reasons why that has happened, that's because there's a lot of basically boomers are getting into the Bitcoin ETFs. So in terms of then what that's going to affect, I don't see these people then getting into alts, rotating into the alts and stuff like that. They're just getting into basically the Bitcoin ETFs. So I expect things to basically play out how they have done before. And yes, Bitcoin rallying, breaking the previous all-time high, it was an exception to previous things when we look back at the historical data, but I don't really think it changes much in terms of what's going to happen after the halving. But I could be wrong, because you've got to remember that, nobody really knows. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the same page with that, for sure. It's interesting that Bitcoin hits all-time high so early. I think we were all panicked for a little bit. It was like, it's going up too quick, but we're seeing it kind of level off now, and everyone's kind of calmed down a little bit. So I'm liking it now. But yeah, in terms of the altcoins, obviously you said you're excited for altcoin season. There's a big thing in terms of crypto trends and narratives. I'd love to get your perspective on what are the crypto trends and narratives that you're mostly focused on at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So I'm very narrative driven, and I'm very heavy on the fundamental research side of things. I don't do a lot of TA, so talking about narratives, it's a big part of what I'm doing on a daily basis. I'm doing a lot of research into different narratives and then projects within those narratives. So there's quite a few that I've been looking at. I'll give you a few examples. So for me, gaming is going to be a big one this run, and you've got PC, mobile, and console gaming. Mm-hmm. And I think if we look back to 2021, the market was incredibly oversaturated with, I'd probably say, low to moderate quality games. And, there were the odd, really good one that, that kind of came through. But I think a lot of them were kind of copycats and on that lower end of the quality scale. And since then, projects have had that time to build and develop, and now we're seeing some real quality come out. We've got AAA games, and then we've got hyper casual gaming as well. You've got the replayability, the addictiveness of playing these games, like things like Candy Crush. They do incredibly well. So you've just got this mass range of games. And when you think about the already existing gaming audience, there's a lot of projects that are targeting the Web 2 gamers as well. So you've already got this huge existing audience that these projects are tapping into. And some projects are kind of going that one level up and being really clever in the sense where they've got the Web 2 gamers playing it, but they've also got the Web 3 aspects in there. But the gamers don't actually know that they're using blockchain technology. So
Yes.
you're getting, as I say, that already existing audience into the project and playing the game. So that's one that I've got my eyes on. AI and Deepin is another narrative that I think is going to be huge. And you often see both of these narratives kind of overlapping with quite a few projects. Now, AI has been absolutely popping off recently. It's been insane. And to be fair, so is Deepin. But the thing with AI is it is incredibly resource intensive, and a lot of AI projects rely on something called GPU compute. Now, there are projects that supply the GPUs and the GPU compute, so there's some serious demand for that right now. And we have projects like Render that's been around for a while, that was probably one of the biggest providers of GPU in the space. But there's new projects like Aether that are coming out, and they have just a significantly bigger supply of GPUs. They can reduce the costs, so they're putting themselves in a really good position. And then you've also got the side which is a little bit less kind of, well, you look at Render, you look at Aether, you've got business to business, but there's also this aspect where you can have a little bit more like business to consumer. So IONET is a really good example of this. And again, it all comes back to this huge demand for GPU compute. So people can basically rent out their GPU compute, and then they can get rewards for doing so. So there's just such a big hype, such a big demand for this at the moment, that all these projects, they can kind of coexist together. And even with all these projects kind of coexisting, the demand is just sky high. So this is both of these narratives, both Deepin and AI, these are huge narratives for me. There's so many. It's like literally being a kid in a sweet shop right now. You've got BRC20, you've got abstraction, you've got real world assets. Like, I could go on and on and on, and forgive me, I'm probably babbling, but there's just so much out there, and there's so much opportunity right now. And I think that if you're new in crypto and you're kind of coming in and you're seeing all this, it can be really overwhelming. So if you're new to crypto and you're thinking, well, what narrative do I focus on? Or you don't really know much about a specific narrative, you don't know about a lot of the hot narratives that are kind of popping off right now, I'd just say focus on a couple, really drill down on them, research specific projects, don't spread yourself too thin. So yeah, a little bit of not financial advice there, try and drill down on a specific area and don't overwhelm yourself, because now is an incredibly important time, and you want to use that time as well as you can and really make the most of this bull run.
Yeah, 100% agree. My narratives is BRC20 and gaming. Those are the two that I've kind of gone into. But like you said, there's also overlap. So there's like gaming projects that are providing GPUs. That's a narrative that I've got in to get exposure to AI, but through gaming. So there's different ways in which they all kind of overlap each other, to try and get some exposure in different types of projects, but making sure that they're core inside of the narratives that you're actually focusing on, which I think is really interesting. Like you said, and there's also other ways of gaming. For example, there's ways or barriers to entry to get into it. You can earn rewards through playing the game. You can also do nodes and run them. You don't have to get involved with the token necessarily. You can just play the games and get involved in blockchain in that capacity, which I think is really, really cool. But yeah, you said before about, researching and getting into these projects. I'd love to understand how you do your research, and also what do you look for in a good project. Like you said, it can be very overwhelming to hear all of these different projects coming out, different narratives. How do you determine from your perspective what you think is a good project for you?
I don't think we've got enough time in this podcast for me to cover everything. But yeah, I my research process is incredibly extensive, to the point where, yeah, it's just not a quick job. But it's one of those things where you don't want to rush it. You want to know a project inside and out, because it could be the difference. You could look at a project and from the outside, oh, this looks great, this has so much opportunity. And then if you're missing one aspect, or you think, you know what, I've not got enough time to research this, and then you go ahead and invest in this project and you've missed something crucial and the project goes to nothing, that's a loss. That's a big loss. And you want to just minimize that kind of stuff as much as you possibly can. I mean, there might be the occasion where something doesn't go the way that you want it to, but having that set research process will minimize the potential of you investing something where I've made a mistake here, I should have noticed this. But to give you a few examples of the things that I would say are some of the most important. So first of all, I'd say the team. So when I'm looking into a project's team, I want to see some kind of relatable experience to what the project is. So if I'm looking at a project that's in the real world asset narrative, and they're backed by property. So for example, PropChain are a real world asset project where you can basically invest in property through asset fractionalization. You say, for example, you want to invest in a property, a penthouse in New York, but you don't have hundreds of thousands, spare to just go, yeah, I'll take that. You can basically invest in it through asset fractionalization, and you can put in, say, a couple of $100 or whatever the baseline is, a significantly smaller amount. And if I'm looking at a project like that, I want to see someone in the team with real estate experience, because how the hell are they going to know what they're doing if they've got nobody in the team that has any experience in that area? So that's super important for me. And it's quite easy to find out as well. It just takes that little bit of time that you need to put in. So find whoever's on the team. You can generally find that maybe on the website. Some teams don't talk about the team. We're talking about cases where you can access the information about the team. Great. Yeah. Then you can easily find them on LinkedIn. You can look at the previous experience, or find them on Twitter. They'll probably be talking about stuff they've done previously or what they're doing now. So that's a really big thing for me. Previous experience. I'd ideally like to see that they've worked with a previously successful project as well. So they've had that experience of going through the different stages of a project. They know what works. They've got that experience. Another one, tokenomics. So these can literally make or break a project. So big thing for me is I like to see how the project's allocation is going to be distributed with all the different buckets. I call them buckets. I know some people don't, but things like you've got a bucket for your team, you might have a bucket for airdrops, pre-seed, all that kind of stuff. I want to see how that's set out, because there's a few things for me that if I see them, it's like somebody's waving a little red flag, and it immediately kind of makes me question the intentions of this project. So an example here is, if I see, I'll go for an extreme example just for example's sake. So I'm looking at the tokenomics of a project and the team has like 40%. To me, it's like, whoa, why have they got so much of that allocation? It makes me question their intentions. Is this potentially just going to be a pump and dump? Are they just going to run off? So all these kind of things you have to take into consideration. And yes, that is an extreme example, but it's literally just to give you a little bit of understanding of the things to look for. And if you want to know more information about it, anybody that's watching, I do loads about this on my YouTube channel as well, if you want to check it out.
Yeah, go check that out. I'm going to add one more thing into tokenomics as well, is vesting schedules.
Yeah.
I think vesting schedules are insanely important, especially when it comes to the team. Like, you want to know that the team has long-term potential and they want the project to succeed. So I like to see them locked up for, a considerable amount of time. Also, early investors, private investors, seed round, things like that, have those tokens locked up and slowly drip fed.
Yeah.
I use a platform called token.unlocks, and that is a platform where you can see all of the latest unlocks for every single major token. So yeah, make sure you guys check that out. I'm meticulous with vesting schedules. Especially with like new tokens that have come out, and it's like pumping so hard, and it's like it's only got 9% supply out. Like, everyone chill.
Yeah, it's super important. And it's not just a case of looking at the examples that we've both given. For anybody kind of watching this, there is so much more to it. So it's not a quick job. It's an area of your research that you really want to spend a lot of time and drill down into. You've got things like inflation as well. So I think the kind of key point here is you need to make sure that your research process is thorough. Have a structure as well, because then you won't miss anything. But yeah, it's not a little job, but it's definitely a worthwhile job.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, so moving on to the next question. I noticed on your Twitter that you have been doing a lot to help your community get into early stage projects, which is, of course, not something that a lot of people have access to or can even do. So I thought that was really awesome that you were doing that. Do you want to touch on what you've been cooking in the background? And yeah.
Yes, sure. So I call it the LOC SharePad, and it's basically kind of stemmed from, I think influencers and content creators generally get more opportunities to get into pre-sales and things like that. And there are some limitations with launch pads that are out there. So depending on, which one it is, you might have to hold a certain amount of the launch pad's tokens. It might be a lottery, loads and loads of different things. And my community is so important to me because without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. And throughout my journey so far into crypto, my community is massively, massively grown. And I've had the privilege of meeting all these wonderful people. And again, I just want to kind of be able to give back to them, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do anything that I do now. And I'm incredibly lucky to do what I do now. So basically, the idea behind it is I'm basically talking with projects, or they'll approach me, and I get allocation for my community in pre-sales. We've done quite a few now, actually. The first one, let me think, was probably, I think, just over a month ago. We've had an absolutely fantastic response as well. And it's just basically giving people more opportunity to get into pre-sales, because yeah, it can be a lot more limited for people. And if you're not a content creator or a social media influencer, you don't get as many opportunities. So I think I just saw this as an opportunity for me to give back to my community, because I'm incredibly grateful for them. I've made some fantastic friends as well. Like, there's quite a few people in my Discord that, they're part of the LOC community. But they're also, I see quite a few of them as friends as well. So just all that put together, I want to be able to help people. I want to be able to give back. And it was just kind of an idea that came about one day, and I was like, yes, let's do this. And then I did the post on Twitter, and there was so much interest in it. So yeah, it materialized perfectly, and it's just been fantastic. And it's something that I plan to continue doing as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I get it all the time from my community. How do I get into pre-sales? How do I get in early? And it is difficult if you're not connected or have a following in the space to get in. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's awesome. And I hope one day I'll be able to do the same for my community as well. But yeah, one last question before we leave. If there was someone who was coming into the market, so their first cycle, and they don't know where to get started? Apart from going and following on your socials and keeping connected with the LOC community, what would be your first port of call for someone that wants to get exposure to crypto?
I would say don't rush into anything. Don't let yourself kind of be taken in by the hype, because a lot of people are excited at the minute. There's a really good sentiment, especially on Twitter. I mean, you'll know, when we're in a bear market, the sentiment on Twitter is completely the opposite to where we are now, should we say. And there's a lot of hype flying around. A lot of people are, really big on certain projects. And I would just say, kind of take a breath and don't get sucked in by everything. Don't FOMO into things. Try and keep yourself really grounded. Get yourself a research plan in place. Take your time with things. Learn how to research. Don't just kind of gloss over something and think, you know what, that'll be fine. And in terms of your capital as well, try to split your capital up into little bags and go for it. Invest in different narratives, but drill down on those narratives, drill down in the project in those narratives. Your number one priority should be protecting your capital. So all these things that you do around that and that encompass that, you need to be switched on. You need to have a structure and you need to have a plan. So I know I've said a lot of different things there. In a nutshell, take your time, learn how to research and be smart with your investing. Don't just throw your capital away, because you never know when it could be the difference between you investing in a project and you've run out of capital and you've missed an opportunity.
Love that. Love that. Well, Lady of Crypto, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate your time. For those who want to get exposure to Lady of Crypto, I'm leaving all of her social channels in the description. And also, if you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure you do leave a comment and subscribe on the channel. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Lady of Crypto, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.